Welcome to the HealthLinks podcast and videocast presented by the HealthLinks family of services. I'm your host, DJ Thatcher. Our mission here is to engage in conversations regarding the health and medical landscape of South Carolina so that we're all better informed. In this episode, we are joined by the Brain Diva, Carrie Boan. Carrie, that's a big title to live up to. What is that all about? And welcome, by the way, to the HealthLinks podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I'm so excited about this podcast. Of course, that's how I'm known as the Brain Diva. That's the easiest way to remember me. And the background comes from my 23 years in physical therapy, but then honing in the past 13 years on concussion education, post-concussion treatment, and then it morphed into overall brain health and how we interact with people on a day-to-day basis, how our brain health supports that and or doesn't support it, and what can we do to master our mind and conquer our chaos. And the only way we can do that is through the brain. Everything starts with the brain. Brain health is number one.
All right. Well, we'll go for a deeper dive here. Hey, first of all, you're based in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and you've got a consulting business there. But as I understand it, you consult with people pretty much anywhere. Is that correct?
Yes, everywhere that I've done virtual conferences this year. I've done virtual consulting for real estate agents on the West Coast, mental health and faith-based virtual conferences. And then, of course, a lot of people travel to our area for conferences. They bring their teams to Charleston and Isle of Palms, and I'm right here. So they come to us, thankfully. But I also travel. I was just in Beaufort in May and Savannah. So I go wherever I'm needed.
We gotcha. All right, folks. Yeah, no matter where you are, Carrie can help you here. So let's pull it all together. So you're the Brain Diva. You're really a Neurolife Coach. You specialize in brain health and emotional intelligence. And these are terms that many of us probably hear, but maybe don't understand. And so give us some insight as to what a Neurolife Coach does and also what emotional intelligence is and how you can help.
So when I started this way back in 2011, 2012, when I started off in the concussion realm, I was just focused on, concussion recovery and educating youth, sports, parents, coaches, and players about how to prevent concussions and how to identify them and treat them. And that was back before, the NFL was really getting involved in it. It was still a taboo topic, and people kind of turned their nose up at it. But then after I really got involved, and my husband was actually diagnosed with post-concussion issues, and we really I was able to look at images of his brain and understand why he did the things he did and why he felt the way he felt. It hit me that my physical therapy background could go so much further than I was really taking it. And that's when I dove into, I wanted to say life coaching, but I knew it wasn't life coaching as most people know it, because I come at it from the brain aspect. That's literally the only way. I hate to narrow it down, but that's literally the only way I can see things anymore, is I want to see how your brain works first, and then I can help you through your issues. That's what I did for myself, because after my husband was diagnosed, I had to work on myself, and I had to help him understand. So coming at everything from how does your brain function, and let me help it function better and optimize it. And then we can look at everything else. So it morphed in from concussion education, prevention, treatment, to coaching people from a neuroscience perspective, whether or not they had a concussion in the past or not. And then it elevated into communications and how can we optimize our brain so that we can communicate clearly in our business, in our life, and it all starts with brain health.
Okay. Well, your husband's condition obviously was a defining moment for you, and we wish him well. You had mentioned before that the term Brain Diva might be something that your former professors might laugh at. Why is that?
When I studied at Penn State Mont Alto 20 Oh, well, yeah, 25 years ago. um, I was not a fan of the brain, studying the brain, the anatomy, and all the intricacies. I didn't comprehend it. I felt like it was a little boring. And if I heard the term circle of Willis one more time, I was like, I'm done. I can't do it.
A little group of blood vessels at the base of the brain, right? Yep.
I can't do this. This is so not fun to me. And now, well, just this morning, I was doing more research on inattentive ADHD, and I just dove into it, and I had to stop myself from diving into it even more because I can just go down the rabbit. So that is my passion now. And yeah, my instructors back at Penn State, I'm sure they've seen some of my work and heard and thought, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Oh, good. So let's think about this now. If we're at a networking event or something and we run into each other, what is your typical client that you might work with? Or what are maybe some of the different types of clients you might work with that might be of interest to our audience?
Most people that reach out to me are, first off, they know that they're lacking focus, lacking clarity. Maybe they get frustrated very easily and they just want help and they're not quite sure where to start, but they know they maybe shut down quickly in confrontation at work.
That's about 90% of the population right there. So
Absolutely. And that's why this is so popular. They shut down, they get overwhelmed, or they get angry.
Okay.
And a lot of people reach out to me with that, and then it kind of travels on there, understanding where those issues come from and how we can rewire our brain. Neuroplasticity is a word that people are hearing, and neuroplasticity was actually not a huge term when I was in college. In fact, I remember distinctly writing on my piece of paper when we were studying stroke, we have 1 year to improve our patient. After that, there will be no progress. That is so not true now, and we know that. But in the early 90s, we didn't really know that. We thought, your brain is your brain. And when you have a stroke, we have about 1 year to get you better. And after that, it's not so good. That is so not accurate. Neuroplasticity is a thing. And my husband's progress, my progress, my elderly patient's progress. I mean, my oldest client has been in her early 80s, she's in progress. So neuroplasticity is real, and anybody can change their brain at any time.
Okay, so let's come back to that. So first of all, for the people who are just they're maybe in a state of crisis, they're not focused. Is that generally when you meet people when they're having some crisis? They say, "Hey, I need help," and they reach out to you, or what?
Yes.
What's your initial interaction with people usually?
Usually I'll get it. Well, it depends on what it is. If it's a post-concussion, I've had parents that have messaged me on Facebook about post-concussion issues with their children. Actually, some of them have been my former high school classmates that know that this is what I do. And then other people, they know that they're struggling in their emotional, personal work life, and they just don't know where to start. And there's such a stigma with mental health still, even though we're really talking about it a lot more, there's such a stigma. So being, I guess, the brain diva and having a little bit lighter, a lighter, I don't know, atmosphere, if that's what you want to call it, easier to reach out to than maybe trying to find a psychologist or psychiatrist, because they're so busy right now and they're overbooked. The healthcare field is overwhelmed right now. So people will reach out to me. And if I don't feel like I'm the appropriate one to help them, I will find somebody who is. Okay. I have a huge network, and I'll talk to the person. I actually just had an hour-long discussion with a woman last week from Charlotte. Her mother needs help. I gave her my network and my recommendations, and I'm not the specific one to help that woman. She needs neurologists and visual therapists, but I was able to give her recommendations and tell her people that should and could and will help her.
Okay. So I may not think I have a mental health issue, and yet I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm juggling multiple priorities with work, maybe family, personal relationships, and that sort of thing. And I'm just not accomplishing what I want to. So if we reach out to you, what are some things that you can help us with specifically regarding that? Is it a series of counseling sessions or assignments that are given, or what does that look like?
The first session always starts with a little intake so I can get the background to make sure I'm the right person to help you. And then we actually do a brain type test. It's a free test. And the brain type test literally tells me what parts of your brain are overactive, underactive, are working properly. And in addition, neurotransmitters that may be overproduced or underproduced. And from that, then we talk about the nutritional aspect of it, because that always comes first. And then after that, we go into the coaching. So I usually ask that people work with me. 66 days is, from the latest research, just enough to start a habit, not 21 days. 66 days. 21 days is
that refutes a lot of books out there. Okay.
21 days is the marketing tactic. 66 days is the actual time it takes to form a new neural pathway and simplify it. So in that first 66 days, you're going to mess up. So I do ask that people work with me for 2 months, meet with me at least once a week for 2 months, just to make sure they're getting in those habits. And then after that, we revisit. But normally when I consult and I work with corporations, they bring me in every quarter and we work towards goals for their corporation and organization.
I see. So that intake test initially, is that just like a written survey kind of test, or is that a physical test, or what does that look like?
It's written and it's actually online, and I can provide the link. It's very interesting. I mean, it just, to some people, it wouldn't tell you a whole lot, but to me, it tells me a lot about how your brain is functioning and what we need to work on. And it's a very simple test. Takes like 5 minutes, and people say, "Oh my gosh, that's so accurate! I can't believe."
Interesting.
And it's just the way our brain works, and that's what I said. Everybody's brain is different, so
Well, you talk about different types of brains. What types are there?
Well, Dr. Amen, of course, I'm an Amen clinic certified brain health coach, and he's identified 16 different brain types.
Oh, okay.
According to the SPECT images that he's done over 30 years, and coinciding them with, symptoms and reports and testing and everything. So 16 different brain types, but then he also has different types of ADD, ADHD that we break down if we get into that. So it's very, very fascinating.
A lot of people, in a way, jokingly say they have ADD or ADHD, but what is the prevalence, though? I don't know if you have any numbers, but how prevalent is that in society today?
Well, I think a lot of times, unfortunately, it's overdiagnosed.
Okay.
Because, and I was just thinking about this a lot this morning, it's overdiagnosed because the first thing we want to do is just make it better. So it's very common to say, well, you're not focused. Let's try this medication. We prefer skills over pills first.
Nice.
We work on the skills, but when you need medication and when you need supplements, you have to be given those, and you have to be given the proper channels to get those. But ADHD, I think a lot of people just say it. They're not necessarily diagnosed with it.
Sure.
Yeah. 75% of our population would probably label themselves as having ADHD just because we can't focus. And that comes from so many places and is not necessarily an actual medical diagnosis. The medical diagnosis has to be done by a physician, psychiatrist, psychologist. And it's literally the frontal lobes not getting enough oxygen and blood flow. It's not just, oh gosh, I can't focus. If your frontal lobe, your executive functioning lobe, is not getting the blood flow and the oxygen it needs when you sit down to do a task, that's ADHD. It can come from many different reasons, and it's not always 100% physical.
Okay.
So it goes deep. But I think it's a lot of people would agree with me. It's overdiagnosed, or
Sure.
and the label is just thrown out there a lot. And really, sometimes if we just put our phones and our coffees down, we would focus better.
Understood. Hitting home. All right. Well, so we've consulted with you. We've had that initial intake exam, and now we're meeting every couple of weeks. I assume that's either in person or virtual. What are some things we might do in those initial meetings? I know you mentioned about nutrition and brain health. Is that a focus early on?
Yes, the first session after you've taken your brain type test is we go over the brain type test. Mm-hmm. And I usually let the client speak and give me their reflection of their brain type test results. And it's usually very accurate. And that opens up a whole new, okay, let's start setting goals. Let's set goals for this coaching, this consulting. Where in 8 weeks, where do you want to be? Where are you now and where do you want to be? What do you want to improve? You have to have something specific that you want to improve, whether it's your actual weight, maybe it's your sleep patterns, your eating habits, or your communication, your anxiety levels. A lot of what I have right now are anxiety focused clients. And rightly so. We have a lot going on in the world. So we set goals. After the first meeting, we set goals, and then we break down those goals into small, manageable steps. And every week we work towards those. So yes, I love it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of what I've done
it on myself. So
well, good. I would think. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of what you do is you're an accountability coach as well. People know they're meeting with you, so they're going to follow through, I take it. So, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not just looking at them as, as I said, the mental health stigma. I'm not trying to put a label or a diagnosis. I'm just looking at, this is how our brain is functioning. You want to make it better in these ways, and this is how we can go about doing it. So it's not necessarily, a lot of people don't love to talk about the brain because it's scary. It's so misunderstood. And then we see ourselves as flawed, and that's not the case. Our brains we all work differently. Okay. And but we just have to find our ability to maximize the way our brain functions so that we're happy and successful. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day.
Okay. Let's look at another type of client you might have, or that you do have. Those are the ones that you mentioned who've had a concussion. So let's say I've had a concussion, whether I'm a kid, I've had a sports injury, or I've been in a car accident. How do I know, and at what point do I know that maybe I need a Neurolife coach, in that post-recovery period?
Usually, especially with the younger ones that are still in high school or college, they struggle tremendously with schoolwork where they haven't before. That's the number one red flag.
Wow.
Usually the parents reach out to me and say, I don't think this has anything to do with the concussion, but it might. And I wondered if you could, assess. And it usually does have to do with the concussion. But other people, maybe their emotions are very unsettled where they used to be fine. Their sleep habits, vision is a huge one that gets overlooked. People will say, well, I'm so sensitive to the sunlight, but I had a concussion a year ago, but I don't think that has anything to do with it. It very well, maybe seeing double, getting dizzy, anything like that. Whenever there's been a concussion in the past, and maybe it seems like everyone, you're doing okay, and then all of a sudden they have these strange changes that are disturbing their ability to function at home and at work or school, that's when they start reaching out. It's when people get to a certain level of frustration, in concussion or not, that they reach out. Okay.
You had mentioned also this whole concept of emotional intelligence, which is something that maybe it's a term that a lot of us hear. What is your definition of that?
Your ability to control your thoughts, your words, your actions, and understand their impact in the moment. And that is key.
How can we improve that?
Rewire the brain, because I used to just, oh my goodness gracious. When I first started in physical therapy, I worked in the hospital settings and I was a hothead. And any of the physicians that might listen to this podcast, they would say, "Oh God, here comes Red," and that was my label. I was always fighting for the best for my patients, but I didn't go about it in the most emotionally intelligent way.
Okay.
But it was always proactive. But I always demanded. I didn't explain, or I wasn't. And people would say, "Oh no, Carrie, not you." Yeah, you can ask my coworkers. And in fact, many years ago, we went around the room and tried to describe the person next to us. And I'll never forget, my coworker took a
Ouch.
She took a deep breath and she said, "Carrie is very passionate about."
That's a buzzword, right?
Thank you for being polite. Yeah. But everybody laughed because they knew what she meant. I was a hothead and I would fight to get my patients what they deserved. And not that it was wrong. I just didn't employ emotional intelligence. My neural pathways, my brain function was fight or flight, go, 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 and tell them what you want until you get your way. And that's, how I operated right up until about, 2011, 2012. And then working on myself and the emotional intelligence, I had to lay new neural pathways. And it's not easy, just like breaking a habit, drinking too many Diet Cokes a day. New neural pathway has to be laid. In the same way, I had to work on myself in emotional intelligence, watching what I say, deciding how I say it, and realizing the impact that my words made in the moment.
I bet there are a lot of people who are listening or watching the podcast right now and thinking, yeah, I know someone like that really well, So you've gone from...
And when I do public speaking, lots of times I'll say, who in this room has ever said something that they really regretted and wanted to take back immediately? If I'm like, come on, everybody needs to raise their hand, because we've all done that. And we've also been in a heated conversation. And after the conversation ends, we hang up or we drive away and we say, "Oh, wow, I should have said that in that conversation." Again, our brains are in fight or flight in the moment, and we don't think about the right things to say.
Sure. Well, it sounds like there's lots of opportunities here. So what is the investment in this then? I'm not sure if this is something that is private pay or if insurance could cover any of this. What might that investment be of both time and maybe money to secure your services?
Usually, at least an hour to start with. An hour a week meeting with me is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you're not going to get the results that you want. And of course, they can email me on the side and everything, but everything is a private pay. I don't file insurance. And it usually, some people are able to go through programs at their work to get reimbursed for things like this. I have had that in the past. So that could be an option, but most people will pay privately. They're at that point that they need the help.
Sure. Yes. Well, it's good to understand, exactly what is available and, what that investment is. So good. Maybe one final thought here, and you brought this up earlier. It's that we're inundated today by, these devices and social media and so forth. And how does that whole social media aspect really affect our mental health?
It takes a toll because we don't set boundaries in our social media life. I actually do have a download on my website. It's called Master My iLife. And I created it a couple of years ago from a blog, and it helps you set boundaries and hide some of your social media apps and put time limits on them. And we also, with the emotional intelligence piece, we have to know when to read something and dismiss it and not let it ruminate in our minds, because that will take a very heavy toll on our mental health. And it's very challenging. And of course, during COVID, that's all we had, right? We were stuck inside.
Right.
And we were all stuck on the phone, and it's tough. You need to master your mind so that you can set boundaries, to turn off the social media, to dismiss what you don't want to focus on. And does it really affect you? Does it need to be said? And that's something I focus on when I do public speaking. I talk about that quite a bit, because it will help you personally if you know when to stop and take a break, breathe, freeze, don't respond, don't reply, think about the other person's perspective. It helps you. It doesn't just help the other person, but it helps you sleep better at night. It helps you be more calm during the day with your kids, with your family and your coworkers. And it just brings more peace to your life overall. And then people start looking at you like, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm controlling my brain. I'm controlling my mind. I'm controlling my thoughts. And then when you control your thoughts, your words and actions follow.
Wow. I bet a lot of people right now want a consult. What is the best way to get a hold of you, Carrie?
When you go to my website, you can click on the contact form, and it takes you immediately to provide all of your contact information, and I will reach out from there.
So, Carrie, a lot of people are probably interested in reaching out to you for a consult. What is the best way to reach you?
If you visit my website, eisuccess.com, and click on the contact form, you can submit all your information, and I will reach out to you as soon as possible.
Terrific. Well, this has been very intriguing, to say the least. So thank you so much, Carrie Boan, the Brain Diva, for joining us here on the HealthLinks podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, our podcasts are also video-based, and so you can log in and not only hear our guests, but of course, see some of the pictures and video that go along with the subject as well. And as always, for any questions about our guest, or for any comments or maybe suggestions for future podcasts, reach out to us at listen@healthlinkspodcast.com. I'm DJ Thatcher. Thank you for joining.